back to the suspension. This is suspension part number 2. I just took out the passenger side Toyota suspension. What we're going to do now is start breaking this down, and I'm going to show you what I need to do to make this strut fit in the Porsche knuckle. So let's get to work. Well, that was not at all how I wanted that to go. However, I did need to cut this off. So this trash. Now what that brings me to is to be able to fit this strut through here. It's a basic strut tube. I'm going to have to peel away the outer skin that used to be the flange that I just now mutilated. I'm going to cut this all the way off. We're going to get it to fit in here. And then there's a tab I got to talk about later that is made to go through here and have a through bolt. So I'm going to get the cutting, and the way to go about that is they've seam welded the whole bottom half, so it's kind of tricky and a little bit on the top. So I'll get to that cutting now. Alright, the next problem we have with the struts are the strut angle. So this is the inside of the car, so our engine's inside here, and normally when you put this in the car, this meets the strut tower just like this. However, when I put in the Porsche parts, we change the strut angle. So this is how it sits in the car, and we can't bolt it up that way because we'll rip out the top of the strut tower. So the obvious answer is I need coilover suspension with spherical bearings. So all it does is it'll rotate and meet that angle itself. However, just to get us by and put wheels on it, I'm going to put a top plate on it, and it's going to slide down. And you can see this section here, it's actually 5 millimeters and it's off from the car. So I'm going to make a 5 millimeter spacer, and it's going to meet this angle, so that way when we do bolt this down and put some pressure on it, we're not going to do any damage to the strut towers that we have in there. So next step, make this portion out of some steel, some plate steel, make the 2 washers that go on the back, and then we'll get things bolted in the car. Okay, so I turned my cardboard cutout or templates from my top hats, transferred it over to steel, and as you can see, these are the riser bushings that I have on the back. It's just a steel tube, 5 millimeter tube, and when we put it on here, this is all I was looking for. Gives me that little bit of angle difference. Strut tower will fit flush to the top of this. So now we're going to work on the bottom of this strut, and I'll show you the tab I need to make to fit that hub. Okay, now that I got the bottom of this strut assembly all cleaned up and I got that tab off of there, the main difference that we're looking at between the Porsche strut assembly and this one is there is this tab that sits on the very back of it. And how that works is you take out this whole strut assembly, it slides through the knuckle tube, and there's where the through bolt goes in here. You tighten it up and it's now all one piece. The other thing is this top hole is just you put the brake line through and you put your clamping bracket in there. So for me to get this in the right spot, I'm going to mock everything up on in the car, get this bolted to the knuckle, and this will tell me a correlation of where this actually sits on the strut. We're going to put a couple tack welds just for testing reasons because we might have to change it later. And I guess we'll move on to the next step. Alright, so here it is all mocked back up again. Now it's got to sneak behind there, tack weld in that tab. And also we're going to get rid of all those brakes you see hanging. So get that stuff out of my way. And next time I take the suspension apart, I'll have to fully weld this back tab into it. Alright, so another issue I need to address here, which is luckily a simple fix, is this flexible joint on the lower control arm to the trailing arm. I initially thought this might be okay, but when I was installing it, you can see this actually changes the angle of that ball joint tremendously, so that's not going to work. Luckily for just a simple fix, we'll be replacing this rod end with a solid rod end, and we'll do that and I'll show you the difference. Alright, just here it is all swapped out. So I got rid of that one with the movable eyelet in it. And now you can see plenty more solid, no flex to it. So I'll swap out the one on the other side and then we'll move on. Alright, most excitingly, by switching out the Porsche knuckle or moving over to the Porsche knuckle, we're able to get rid of these cast iron single piston brakes, which contains the parking brake also, and we can now use the 4-piston brembos off the Boxster S, basically just taking more Boxster S parts and putting them to work. This is extremely light, and the other benefit, you can see we have a pretty good size difference in comparison. The other thing I want to mention, that this whole thing and this smaller puny version both weigh 18.2 pounds, so I'm not adding any weight by going to the bigger brakes, and we're getting rid of the old antiquated stuff anyway. So now we're going to go ahead and fit this stuff up. This is a rough fit. I still have to work on plumbing everything later, but we'll get this stuff on there. Okay, here it is on the car, and it's still just mocked up, but we do need to put brake lines, both parking brake and the hydraulic lines to it. It looks like I may have to wind up modifying the Porsche, if you can see it back there, parking brake, or just try to retrofit the Toyota one to it. The Porsche one is a little too short, and we're going to wind up cutting the video here because I'm going to have to wind up changing a lot of things to make this tow arm fit. I wind up making this sway bar and modified it from a Boxster S, but as you can see, I'm probably going to want to make, away from where that mounting location is, I'm going to want to lower it to where this is, but I'm probably going to make a mount behind it. So the next video, we're going to blow apart the whole sway bar area. I'm probably going to cut off these ears, and we're going to come up with an option for toe-in adjustment. And so until then, I'll let you go, and we'll see you next time.